Our next speaker had an airport incident yesterday and was unable to travel, but at great expense, we're beaming him in here live to you all. It's Gary Sealey, the head of our digital and comm specialist with Vodafone, and he's going to talk about communicating in times of crisis and how these two worlds of comms and change are colliding. Gary, I see you smiling. Take it away.
Paul, pleasure. Thank you so much. Paul, I'm going to ask you a quick favour. I'm going to assume you can all hear me loud and clear.
We can hear you. Yeah, it's a little bit of reverb, so maybe flatten it out.
All right.
I used to be a sound engineer, by the way.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm just going to ask you, if you don't mind, because I can't see everyone in the audience at the moment, obviously. So I just wondered if you'd stay on stage for a moment, if you don't mind. I'm not going to ask you to dance or anything like that, unless you feel like it, obviously. But what I want to do is just get the energy levels up a little bit. It's been a long afternoon. So can I just ask for the people on sort of like the back rows of the desk, if they can just give me a big yay!
Can you hear Gary? Yay!
And again, I didn't quite hear it.
Louder, he didn't hear you.
People at the back? People at the front, I want a big whoa!
He takes it to an empty room.
I can't hear anyone.
No.
Did I get a big whoa from the front line of the people?
Middle row, maybe? Sure.
It's not working very well, is it? And then finally, I was going to ask the people in the middle row to give you a big clap. I just about heard that, Paul. That's brilliant. I don't know if everybody is feeling a little bit more energised, but at least you do know what to do at the end of my presentation now, so I'll move on. So if we go on to the next slide, which hopefully I am in control of. For those of you, obviously, that are only seeing me virtually, this is me, a little bit bigger than perhaps you can see me on the screen. This was actually our first event back at Vodafone after COVID, when we had our first Christmas dinner all back together. So I needed to make a bit of a statement for that party. So I dressed up, and that's my Frozen-inspired outfit for the Christmas dinner. So we won't dwell on that one, but what we will do is move on to the next slide. It says, why should you listen to me? But why listen to what I've got to say? It's a good question, isn't it? Because lots of us are presenting today, giving you lots of feedback, lots of information. But why us? Why are we the right people to be doing that? Well, as the next slide says, I've been around a bit. You can probably see I'm of the older group of colleagues that are at this presentation, but that doesn't make me any less slow or a lover of technology and digital content that we use in communications. What it does mean is I've had a lot of experience of comms. I started my comms journey back in the mid-90s. So I've been around for a little bit. I was going to ask Paul if he could tell me, are there any other people in the audience or online that were in this role during the 90s or before? Let's see if I get an answer to that. Is that a no one, or is that a no reply to that question? No, not getting a reply. Well, let's just say, any of us that were doing comms in the 90s, or quite a select bunch of people, were the only people probably that will ever work in this industry across 2 millennia. So there's a little thought for you if you've never thought of that one before. So yes, I've been doing this since the mid-90s across a number of organisations. The picture that you're seeing reflects the work that I did with children and young people in mental health services, which does rate really highly amongst my list of things that I've really enjoyed doing over the years. And I worked with young people, adolescents, young adults, who were experiencing the services of the Mental Health Trust in my area of the world in England, in the southwest. People with learning disabilities, people that were just not engaging very well or had early sort of onset of quite serious mental health issues. And they were having real problems engaging with the service, the stigma associated with mental health. So I worked with those guys to help them come up with a new name for the service and actually feel proud to actually engage with the services that they were receiving. And I think, this actually reflects on some of the things that have been said today, because these people were actually proud, and we can now talk about mental health at work a lot more than we could before. Nobody sort of bats an eyelid anymore. If somebody breaks their leg, you kind of go, oh, blimey, sorry about that. If somebody comes in and says, I've been suffering from anxiety, stress, depression, there isn't that fear anymore. People kind of accept it. So that work features very highly in what I've done. I also worked in the utilities sector back in the day. Again, this was in the mid-90s. And this was actually when I moved from a marketing role into a more internal comms focused role. It was sort of the start of my adventure into internal comms. And there was a specific reason for that. It was because back in the end of the 90s, the energy sector in the UK went through quite a transformation, and all of a sudden competition was introduced. And electricity companies could sell gas, and gas companies could sell electricity, which is all very common now. But back then, people would come out of an era where you only ever bought electricity from your local electricity supplier, and you only ever bought gas from, as it was then, British Gas. And lots of people had lots of questions about it, the customers and the staff. How could you send gas down electricity cables and things like that? And although we think that's probably pretty daft now, at the time, it was so new, these were the kind of things that we needed to let people know. So I went from a purely marketing role into this world of what I now call change communications and internal communications, where people need to know new stuff to be able to do things that they've always been able to do. And I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's what I've always kind of called my role within internal comms. I've never overcomplicated it. I like to simply say, I need to let people know what they need to know when they need to know it. And if I always follow those rules, I kind of make sure that people are aware of what's going on. So that's how I started out in internal comms back in the 90s. I've also worked with Nationwide Building Society. They're the biggest building society in the UK. And they are one of the very few remaining building societies that are owned by the members. So instead of it being a bank that's owned by shareholders, it's owned by the people that invest and have mortgages with the actual building society. And I worked with them to actually move them from their existing IT support company to a new IT support company back a few years ago. That was a massive undertaking to allow us to actually move from one supplier to the next without actually sort of interfering with any of the systems or processes that Nationwide used. And very early on in this, we started using an analogy of moving people, ironically, after yesterday, from one flight to another flight, but staying in midair because they had to keep flying. We could not turn the systems off in a bank or a building society at any point whatsoever. In fact, any downtime with any bank is inevitably headline news. So that was a thoroughly enjoyable period of time, very, very tricky, but we did it. And then finally, I'm where I am now. I finished up at Vodafone. And I love it. I really do love being at Vodafone. It's kind of my spiritual home. So excuse the spirit there that we have around Vodafone. The Vodafone spirit, incidentally, is our cultural way of working for Vodafone. We have 4 quite simple sort of rules that make up our spirit behaviours. And one of them is we create the future, which I think is really exciting and a good reason why I'm actually here talking to you today. Because not only do we do all the things that you're probably familiar with in Vodafone, and for most of you, that's no doubt the provision of mobile phones and being able to call your friends and family and send text messages, but actually the area of the business I represent is Vodafone Business. and were responsible for actually providing the fixed line network to some of the biggest businesses across the world, the likes of Apple, Amazon, and we provide generally their internet services. So like you'd have a broadband solution going into your own home, we provide that to businesses, and you can imagine, quite easily you have to scale that up massively from a normal domestic internet connection to something that's capable of supplying some of you guys' big offices and all of the computers that are running. The pace of change at Vodafone is, quite frankly, incredible. And that's something that I'm going to go on to in a little bit more detail as we go through. The great news is some of the guys, Tom and Sarah, I hope you don't mind me calling you out, but and there's a couple of other people on the invite list I've noticed that have actually now got change in their job title. And I think from an innovation point of view, this is going to happen way more. So there's already been the debate about how many people sort of work within HR and whether internal comms is a HR function, standalone part of marketing. But I also think the thing we need to think about going forward is how internal comms actually builds a relationship and starts working with the change teams within organisations. So I won't go into that in any detail, but we will cover it in a little bit. So what I want to do is move on to communication, innovation, and agility. And I'm going to stay on the timeline a little bit. So where I've spoken about what I've done in the past, I actually want us to sort of stop and just take a moment to reflect on what we actually do in the world of communications and how we have had to be innovators over the last, well, I've looked at it in the last 3 decades. So from the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now into the 2020s, because they've been an incredible period of time where change has just been phenomenal. And there was a great comment from Tanya in that young people are sort of like the modern influencers, and actually they're the ones that can come up with video content for TikTok and things like that really quickly. And my daughter's 10. That's her, incidentally, on that photo. So she's a dancer as well. So a couple of things in common with Tanya. But it's true, young people do adopt these things much quicker than perhaps some of us who are a bit older. But on saying that, I've always loved technology. I've always loved the latest thing. I've always wanted the latest iPhone. I've always wanted the latest laptop, that kind of thing. And kept in touch with technology and innovation, and been an early adopter wherever I can of technology, rather than some of the old laggards in marketing speak. So I want to take you through, like I say, a little bit of history, and I hope what this will do is inspire you to go out and think, blimey, yeah, we've been through a lot, but there's so much more. And I'll finish this section with a little video that will hopefully show you where we could go, where we could be as communication professionals, and where the channels that we use might actually take us. So this is a little bit of blue sky thinking. I hope you enjoy it and see the reflection as a little bit of a reminder of where we've been and what we've done. So that's me now, smiling away, and in my hand is a magazine that I used to publish for the utilities back in 2000. So I did myself used to create analog communications. I used to print and edit and distribute a newsletter, and the joy of that newsletter was when it landed on people's desks, it was out of date because things were already starting to move so quickly. So, newsletters were great, they were lovely, tactile, people said I want it because I could read it on the train, I could take it with me, that kind of thing. But you had to publish stuff that wasn't really news, it was stuff that wasn't going to go out of date. So, we had to move on. And that takes us into this timeline. And there's going to be some faces and some things that you'll see on here, and hopefully some of you will recognise. But this is sort of, like I say, a journey through the last few decades and what's influenced the way that we communicate, talk to our colleagues, and talk to the people around us, more importantly, as well. So I'm going to take you back to 1992. 1992, for those that can remember, was the year that the first text message was sent on a mobile phone. It was sent in December 1992, and the very first text message said, "Merry Christmas." And back then, that was quite amazing to be able to do that. But now, we've kind of gone past it, and we'll talk about that. But text messaging has come and gone, it developed, and those of us that are old enough are grateful for that, because when you just had a manual keypad, and it took you about 15 button presses to say hello, I'm glad those days are gone. But it was a massive change in the way that we communicate, and nobody would have recognised then just how text messaging and communications on a mobile device would actually influence the way we all communicate over the coming decades. There was another man that was very, very influential at this time, and I don't know, again, if any of you recognise this man. I'm sure there's a few of you in the room that do recognise him, but this is Tim Berners-Lee. And the following year, from 1992, so into 1993, Tim Berners-Lee released the World Wide Web code into the public domain. So 1993 was really the year that website technology began. It wasn't long after that I learned HTML code, and it wasn't too long after that I implemented my first intranet. So as much as I love hearing about all of the implementations of intranets and the way they're used, I do sometimes sit back and think, have we moved on from intranets? Are they a little bit, last decade's tech? Well, in Vodafone, we really only use the intranet now for getting information that you need on a daily basis. So booking leave, HR policy, looking at your pay slip, that kind of thing. Static information, it doesn't change. It really isn't a news channel anymore. It really is just the stuff you need. All of the news, all of the fast-moving stuff is on different channels, and we'll look at that in a moment. But just shortly after that, those of us, like I say, that worked in this industry or were in communications in the 90s, experienced the first bug that we're going to talk about, the millennium bug. So in sort of like the late 90s, all of a sudden, we all realized in panic that everything that we used and that was going into a technical environment might actually stop working at midnight on the 31st of December, 1999. So if any of you in the room like me can remember that, we were on tenterhooks, to say the very least, especially still working in the utilities at that point. Was the power going to stay on? Were the traffic lights going to continue working? All of those things, it could have been a complete disaster, but most of us will remember it for the fact that it was pretty much a bit of a damp squid and nothing really happened. The world kept turning, and all of the best planning that no doubt we'd all done prior to it, and we were all clutching our computers and what have you, ready to send communications at that point and let everyone know that what they had to do if things had gone wrong never materialized. So that was good, but it did change the way we think about things. Now, I don't want to dwell on this one for too long. 2001, the year after the millennium bug, the one event that changed the world for many of us in so many different ways. It's something that none of us ever thought could or would happen. And it's not so much the event that I remember, although of course I do with everyone else. It was the way that I received my news, the way that people communicated with me changed on that day. Because although we've been sending text messages since 1992, on that day, I can remember, like most people, exactly where I was and what I was doing when this horrific terrorist incident happened. And I was walking through Bristol city centre, close to where I live, and I received a text message, and it's the only text message that I can ever really remember receiving. Other than that, they were just noise. But I got a text message from a friend of mine that said, "Have you seen the news?" And that, as far as I'm concerned, was the first time that I'd been pulled to a news story, or rather I'd been pushed to go and find out more. Whereas previously, if I wanted to see the news or wanted to find out what was going on prior to this, I would go and pick up a newspaper. I'd have to log on to the internet and go to the early web pages that gave us news, our Sky News, BBC in the UK. and actually see what was going on. But for the first time, I had something that actually made me physically go somewhere, and that was a local television shop to see what was going on and what was actually happening. And that was a massive change, I think, for all of us in the way that all of a sudden news that was happening was being given to us instantly. We didn't have to wait till the news the next day or the print publication of the newspaper the next day. It was there. We were seeing it unfold in real time. And to me, that was a huge change. Shortly after that, in 2004, this man, who you'll all no doubt recognise, we're getting a little bit more up to date, released Facebook. And a lot of other social channels all of a sudden became available in 2004. And this, I mean, what a huge influence these people and their services have had on the way that we communicate. All of a sudden, we're able to share news instantly. We're able to talk to each other through these channels. We're able to update people on what we had for lunch. Great. Maybe even send them a photo of it if you're that way inclined. But all of a sudden, we were able to tell people about what we were doing and get information instantly. Quite unbelievable. I can remember Friends Reunited, which was the first platform, social media platform I used in the UK, where I could catch up with people who I went to school with. There weren't many that I wanted to, but I did, and it was quite interesting. And it was the start of a whole new way of having friends and keeping in contact with the people we know. Then in 2007, this man, Mr. Jobs, came along and gave us the iPhone. It was the dawn of a new device, a new way of us keeping in contact, a new way of us sharing information. The smartphone has just changed everything. For the better? Well, in many ways, yes, but we do know that it's almost gone too far and that, you know, it's kind of killed conversation on a local level. When we go out for a meal with our friends, you know, there's always somebody on their phone. Probably like yourselves, I wish we didn't have that side of it, but we do all of a sudden have the ability to keep in touch with people and do way more through this device. And do you know what's really interesting? We've all got this relationship with our personal devices, with our smartphones and the way that we use them, to the point that Vodafone back a number of years ago did some research into how you actually emotionally bond with your phone. And it's quite fascinating that if you lose your phone or break your phone to the point where you can't use it anymore, it's a sensation that is akin to losing a member of family or a friend. You actually go through those series of emotions. It's not just anger and annoyance. You're actually emotionally attached, probably because we all keep so many memories with photos, videos, those kind of things on our phones. So that was a massive, massive change in the way that we receive and we communicate with people. Now, this chap you won't be so familiar with. This chap is Vittorio Colao, and he was our chief exec of Vodafone back at the time of the launch of mobile phones and smart devices. And the reason I brought Vittorio up is because this man was quite a visionary in many ways. Not only did he put himself through every single one of our customer experiences, from buying phones to using them to changing tariffs, all of those kind of things, and provided feedback on his experiences, he was the first person I can remember that used his smartphone for an intriguing new thing: communication to all of his colleagues and staff. So Vittorio would leave Italy, and he'd fly over to the UK. He'd get here, unlike me. I didn't get to you, but again, I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. But what Vittorio would do he was one of the first users of the Samsung Galaxy Note. There's a surprise. He worked for Vodafone. He had access to this, you know, spanking new technology. But he did something really clever with that Samsung Galaxy Note. When he was on his way from Italy, he recorded a little video of himself, and he'd be talking to us, his colleagues, his workforce in the UK. And that little recording would tell us why he was coming to the UK on this visit, what he wanted to do, what he was going to see, who he was going to see. So when Vittorio walked into the offices at Newbury in England, there wasn't this sort of like enigma character that none of us knew what to say or, you know, how to talk to him as this CEO, we knew why he was there. And we could all go up to him as he walked through and said, "Oh, Vittorio, you're seeing so-and-so today. I was talking to him yesterday and we did X, Y, and Z." So all of a sudden we have this amazing connection with our CEO that we've never had before. So again, the way in which we can communicate to our colleagues is constantly changing, and using new technology is a brilliant way of keeping in touch. And not everyone has caught up yet with that kind of technology and that kind of approach. But if you haven't, use it. We've all got these amazing devices in our hands where we don't have to send a newsletter. We don't always have to send an email. Record yourself and pop your video onto the intranet or onto your workplace or onto Yammer or whatever platform you have for sharing video, and engage with people in a different way. You can get so much more across to people in a 30-second video than you can in a written piece of communication. So that's why I brought Vittorio up. There's just two or three more. There's that man, Mr. Jobs again, 2010 with his iPad. Again, a brand new way of us being able to make notes, interact with our organization, and many CEOs and senior people wanted to have an iPad. They didn't want a notebook anymore, and that's how they wanted to receive their information. And why not? It was a gorgeous piece of technology. And again, now we've pretty much all got them, and they're virtually pennies to buy for most of us. So again, people that are out, we've heard about people working on oil rigs and that kind of thing today. Fascinating. But the technology that people have in their own pockets does enable them to keep in touch. And this is a point that I'm going to make in just one moment. We've got now Amazon Alexa. 2014 was the first release of Amazon Alexa. And to me, again, this is a step change, and I'll tell you why I think this was a step change. Picture this, before Amazon Alexa, before your smartphone, you're watching a TV program and there's an actor on that program and you've gone, he was in, and you can't remember. And maybe 2 or 3 days later, you remember what that person was in. And you bring your friend who you were watching that program with and went, Tom Cruise, he was in Top Gun. And everyone go, oh yeah. That doesn't exist anymore, because everyone, since these devices came along and Amazon Alexa came along, or any of the other, IoT devices that you might use, Google or obviously Apple devices, they all give you this instant information now. What programs has Tom Cruise been in? What films has Tom Cruise been in? Alexa, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? And I did make sure I turned my Alexa off before this presentation because I knew it would go off. But all of this information is now instantly available wherever you are. And this is where there's a massive change that I will go on to. Finally, what happened, of course, is that millennium bug at the top became a real bug in the end of the 2019 to 2020, and coronavirus hit us and changed everything. And everyone's spoken about the way that it changed the way we work. So I'm not going to dwell on that. We've been through it. We know what it's done. We're a remote workforce. What I will say is, if you get a chance and you've got Disney Plus, have a look at the latest Disney short. Not just because I'm a Disney fan, I am, but there's an amazing video that's just been added, and it talks about how they made Lightyear, the latest film that's just been released, if everybody loves the Toy Story franchise. And what it does is it talks about how Disney still have the same principles that they did when Walt Disney was making amazing hand-drawn animated cartoons at the start of the century. They've still got that same philosophy. They still want to tell the stories, which is all, that's what we do at the end of the day. We are storytellers in what we do. But they have this incredible way of using modern technology and innovation to create something spectacular in a remote working way that still has that original Disney quality and storytelling that it always had. So if you want to be inspired as to how to use technology, but to still be able to tell a story in a really traditional, lovely way, take a look at that little short. It's half an hour, and I'm sure you'll thoroughly enjoy it. So, as I promised, I'd end this section with a little video of what I think is coming. And this isn't based on my own thinking. This is based on technology that exists today. and it's technology that we used at Vodafone to launch 5G. Most of you would have heard of it, the latest, mobile technology, the fastest way we've been able to receive data on our mobile phones, and the ability to share an amazing amount of data. And like I say, I'm not here to sell the Vodafone services, but this, I think, is where communications is heading. So with that, I'll just play this video.
Back in April, we did our first live test 5G call. Today, I'd like to build on that and show you what we can really achieve.
Today, we're going to be calling somebody really special in our Manchester base. This call is going to be the UK's first holographic call live using 5G, so super exciting. Joining us is Manchester City and England football captain Steph Houghton. Hello, Steph.
Hello, are you okay?
Hey, it's great to be able to see you. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm overwhelmed that I can see you. Absolutely amazing. Iris has travelled all the way from London today. She's a massive Manchester City and England football fan. Hi, Iris.
Hello.
Hello, Iris, how are you?
It must be amazing to be a captain. What skills do you think it requires?
First and foremost, you've got to work hard, but also be there for your teammates, both on and off the pitch.
I hope everyone in the room can see the power of our emerging technology and some of the fantastic experiences we can create. Thank you.
Whoops, sorry, let's get past that without saying it again. There we go. So, as I say, what we've done is gone through sort of 3 decades of ways of which we've communicated and kept in touch with our colleagues and our staff and told the stories that we have to do. And it feels to me as though the technology we've got coming to us, I mean, that was amazing to be able to interact with a live hologram on stage, one person in Manchester, one person in Newbury, acting together on stage, but in 2 separate locations. For me, blew my mind in the fact that all of a sudden we could perhaps get back to the face-to-face communications that, let's be fair, everyone really loves. When we talk to anyone, everyone really wants face-to-face communications. Imagine a world where we can get our CEO or any of our senior managers to stand in front of a device that projects them and their conversation, their presentation, and them in 3 dimensions to anywhere in the world at any time and deliver the same presentation to all of those people and only have to do it once. It's quite amazing. So I don't know about you, but I'm dead excited about what's to come and what our world of communication will become over the next decade or 2. Whether I'm still in it at that point, we'll see what age retirement comes to me. But just finally, because I'm conscious I'm probably at time, but I just want to talk about some golden nuggets and also how internal comms and change comms have sort of come together. Like I said, there was this fascinating conversation earlier about whether we're part of HR or whether we're a standalone area of the business. But what we are and what I'm sure we know we will be is a team of people that will never stand still, because if the one thing there is that's a constant, and that's change. And like I said, Tom and Sarah spoke about the fact that it's quite a new title in their role. I've been doing it for quite a long time. And I'd just like to share sort of the one thing with you, really. This will never end. Change is a constant. And the difference, I think, between the pure role of internal comms and change comms is very targeted to a very individual group of people, and it allows us to take those people on a journey to new ways of doing things. Whereas we had newsletters before that told people potentially what had happened once it happened, change communications is way more about taking people on a journey from the conception of that change, an idea, a thought about how we could do something, right through to the point where they actually own that and they've adopted that particular change. Many of you will be familiar with the awareness curve. I'm sure you've all used it, but that's how I see communications going. That's the innovation I see, in that we spend a lot more time talking to people about the journey they're going on and changing with them and not to them. I know that's quite a dated saying now, but it's never been more honest and truthful than it is now. Many of us, including myself, are now working in an environment of change where we use Agile methodology. Some of you in the room will be familiar with it. Others would have heard of it, but maybe not used it. And Agile technology really does change the way in which we communicate. We're no longer telling people about a new phone. We're telling them about how we've built that phone, the stages of that phone, right through to the point where they can tell somebody how to use it. So it's a huge change, and I hope you're excited about that change. I hope that gives you a little bit of inspiration. I hope you go away thinking, no, it's not just the teenagers that can do this. I can do it as well. I've been there. I've been through this change, and I can make a video and actually get engaged a little bit and do some communication. So I'll stop. I'll hand over for any questions. I've gone through that as quick as I can. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you feel a little bit inspired.
Thank you very much, Gary. Big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gary. That was great. Really felt the passion over the Zoom, and it was really a great voyage through the ages as well. Maybe we'll get you via hologram next year. That would be really cool. Do we have any burning questions before coffee for Gary? We have a caffeine-deprived audience here, Gary.
I'm not surprised.
And we're running way over schedule. I'm presuming it's okay for anybody to contact you through the app or LinkedIn if they have any questions or comments.
Absolutely, I'd love to. And yeah, feel free to link in however you'd like to.
Thanks so much, and that was really great. Another final applause for Gary.